Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We are going back in with forgiveness and at forgiveness. Last week we walked the perimeter on forgiveness, and that was just because I couldn't forgive. Like to do forgiveness, there has to be like forgiveness. And I realized watching that afterwards, I'm like, oh, I need to go through like the valley of like, how do I forgive people and things in my life before we talk about like the technology, like cracking the code on forgiveness. Like guides were like, no. And so this has to be pulled way back, and I'm excited because I'm starting to understand. I'm a little bit wibbly wobbly because I feel like understanding means facing like things. It's like, oh, when the veil gets lifted, then you look, and when you look, you're like, really? The veil was like the veil sort of provides it's like a movie screen, that veil, you know, the veil that separates us from the other world is it's like a screen that we can project anything on, and anything that like works in terms of like how we're going to interact with what's beyond it. Yeah. it's like a big projection screen in one way or another. But to step into this like space, and it's a kind of a liminal space, and to step into this space honestly, to step into this space openly, and to sort of enter into that like truth of what an oracle is and what an oracle does, is to look through that screen, to be like willing to look through that screen and be willing to interact with what's actually behind that screen. And nothing is definitive. Everything talks and walks and operates in symbols because this is a story world. The labyrinth is a story world. Like everything says it, like everything that comes down to, boils down to illusion. That this experience is an illusion, and we see that every world religion, every belief system, like this is in one way or another an illusion. But like I think the way that we're looking at the word illusion is wrong. And I think that when we come into this territory with forgiveness and discussing what forgiveness is, we are coming into territory that asks us to practice sublimation. The technology of forgiveness is a technology of sublimation, of the alchemy of sublimation. And sublimation is when something changes form. It goes from solid to gas, ice to vapor. That's an act of magic. That's true magic. That's true magi. It's not like it's been forbidden in our world for a really long time to be able to work in a way where we can free ourselves instantly of the harm done against us, and therefore like never be defeated by it. And defeated by it is losing like vitality, and losing vitality is losing life, and losing life is going more rapidly into a life and death cycle. And there seems to be like an artificial cap that keeps us cycling instead of advancing. And so with this Three of Cups and this Queen of Wands coming out, and this bottom of the deck energy of the Empress, like pregnant with potential, you know, what it means to use this technology properly is to put yourself back into God mode almost. And like, I don't really, God mode seems to be a video game term. I don't know. I just see a video game being played when I say God mode. So those things are connected. But I know what it means like vaguely, as like you have special codes that allow you to be unharmed by the obstacles that are before you. And so when we talk about sublimation, and we talk about the technology of forgiveness, and we talk about entering into superpowers, being able to master forgiveness is a superpower. It breaks every spell that anyone would ever cast against you in any way, shape, or form, since it's all cognitive agreement or disagreement. Like there's something so powerful there. So that's broad, you know, but if we're going to get into it on like particularly, we've been talking a lot about archetypes. We've been talking a lot about archetypal structures and how they operate on consciousness, and like our access to deities and our ancestors is through unconsciousness. And so it's such an imperfect science, and we're so imperfectly entering this arena. But what we do know is that we're not alone by any means, and what it is to identify what we are connecting with energetically is to be able to match the energy we are perceiving with its form, And that form is going to take an archetypal structure, and none of that is like absolute. It's really tricky. What we have in book study is like the tippy top of a mountain. It is by no means like the entire thing, and therefore it is incomplete sight, but it definitely gives us an edge on perceiving the total frame, like we're getting closer. And so I want to like encourage us to think about forgiveness, to think about sublimation, changing of forms, to go into a magical place with our minds on this, because it is a spiritual technology. It is the substance of wine to water, and it's powerful. This has the power to sublimate a story structure that you would otherwise have to like move through painstakingly. It collapses timelines to forgive. It's one of the most powerful things that we've got, and it's our main weapon against immature death. Early loss of vitality. Forgiveness is the way to overcome that spell cast. So let's go into it. Let's enter this space. Let's take a look. I'm going to take a deep breath. I encourage you to take some breaths as we go along, as I take some breaths. So we're working with powerful energies right now, like the source of soul. The source of soul. I'm learning more about collectives. I'm learning more about lineage, and I'm learning more about what my guides are continually referring to as kingdoms, and like the chakra system. Like the chakras are kingdoms, and we overcome these kingdoms within. We advance within through these different arenas of life. And that's the way that we like advance these areas, these different chakras, and their expansion and their growth is through interacting with the stories that enable them to see things differently and change form. So that sublimation process, while being like necessary, and what forgiveness essentially does and is, that sublimation process is the death and rebirth cycle. And so, even like energies like Jesus represent that death and rebirth cycle. And so the good news of forgiveness is that like it says like nothing that anyone's ever done to you, said to you, or conditioned you by will affect your progress and your expansion, your growth, and your abundance. You can undo every horrible thing. Like it's amazing. So that's not even a good example, but it's as close as I can get into like, I'm not trying to sell forgiveness so much as I'm trying to say that like it's an undo button at the grandest scale. Yeah, so that's it. So let's enter right there with this. Let's see where this Three of Cups, this Queen of Wands, and this Empress want to take us. I'm surprised we're starting with these decks, but we are. So we have ancient ones that are nameless, and by that I want to move us out of like icons when it comes to our ascended ancestors. I want us to look at the ascended gods and goddesses and the ascended ancestors as like accessible for us to learn about them in personality and form, being able to recognize the energy as relates to the archetype, as relates to like the communication style. I mean, there's so much we can learn from like our ability to connect with these energies that are within us. There are family energies, there are ascended ancestors, and like beyond that, the ascended gods and goddesses are like often without names, and they might not need names. When our ancestors were in the jungle, identifying by form like these energies of like anger that they saw in other species and in themselves, and therefore it was a god, and they could personify it with an expression. They did not need their names specifically. They were identifying their forms and their vibes and what it meant to interact with them and to feel them and to like develop relationships to them. So it's not like we're so this guy's saying we're not so disadvantaged as to not have the names of our deities and our guides. We are meant to like inform ourselves by their forms and by what it means to relate to them, and to learn this language of symbols is to learn how to communicate with divinity. To learn how to communicate with divinity is to learn how to communicate with aspects of self that have come before in different forms. And that means sublimating our own form to be informed by them. And so this is a channel that's coming straight through without almost any interruption. We're almost not getting any story with this. So if you guys are following along, what I'm feeling so profoundly is that like these relationships that we're meant to have with divinity are meant to be what informs us, not like the iconography that we're shown to like judge ourselves by. And so it's a freer, like more playful process in a lot of ways. And so with this Three of Cups and this Queen of Wands and this Page of Pentacles, we have the Queen of Wands twice. And we have the Empress here. So these are both divine feminine energies that are highly potently, like I think of the Queen of Wands as being that Kundalini, divine feminine energy that is that vibe right there, that fire, that magnetism. And with the Page of Pentacles and the Three of Cups here, there's some healing that we are at like the very cusp of like developing. That Page of Pentacles tells me it's an opportunity. And that handout says the opportunity is like on offer, but not yet received. And that Three of Cups is about community and the divine feminine aspect of God. I want you to start to really think about energies more particularly. Like I shy away from use of energy language, and I'm being told very firmly by the energy that is Apollo. Every time I go into like managing like language, and let me get some water because my throat chakra always goes I'm gonna try and slow this down and get it right. I love talking to Apollo. When I talk to Apollo, Apollo uses he, she, they in with like every 3 words different. And what I mean by that is like when you're learning Spanish or French, or when you're learning these language that genders things, ever learn a language where like bread is feminine and like chalk is masculine, or you know, things are feminine or masculine pronounced? Spanish like is a language where that happens. This is how Apollo speaks about themselves depending on the mood, the situation. Like if we're talking about food, she is saying like she's saying like she's saying she likes this with that food, and then he is having to reprimand like this misuse of music, and then they don't know why we're wandering in this way, but they like the path. Like, do you understand? Like, it's so textual. There's so much layering and texturing to the language and the way that they convey themselves with he and she all the time over the course of like this relationship is a she and that person is a he. And so like, I love it. It's very advanced. It's the future. But so I want to channel in that way. I want to like go in that way, but I often find myself wanting to I don't want to ever not be inclusive when I use he or she language. It's just that I'm always talking about it like Apollo, which when Apollo uses he or she and they language, that it's not about anything but it's about every single thing has different thing, you know, and it's fluid. It's fluid. It's fluid. Like the language is, you become fluent, and then it's hard to go and correct it. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. But when we look at this Three of Cups energy, we're talking about she, community, she. What it means to be together in community is to she. Like that's we're having a she experience. Like and we are she when we are we. And so, and with this Page of Pentacles, this is like we're in this infancy of understanding this powerful, seductive, like divine feminine that's a warrior queen. That's the one with superhuman Kali mothering, like throw someone across the street, look at their child wrong. Like this is that energy, and we are pregnant with discovery of what it means to tap back into these powers and these principalities within that are healthy, that are natural, that are true expressions of divine feminine energy. And so when we look at Apollo's use of language, like, and when we look at what it means to enter into like the infancy of like she knowing herself in this power as the divine feminine aspect of God, powerful, empowered, reigning supreme as a fiery, passionate, like Kundalini kind of a queen. That Empress says that like this is pregnant with possibility within ourselves always. And so when we talk about forgiveness, we're sublimating some story about like Joe Schmo next door did this. And like that's making it trivial. But that's what the technology is. The technology is making the person who hurt you, the situation that hurt you, the circumstance that hurt you, sublimating it into that which is trivial. And that's what this Queen of Wands does. This Queen of Wands takes that insult and she sublimates it into something that is trivial. She takes that circumstance and she tames it and crunches it down and stamps it into something that is trivial. because she will not be like affected, you know, by something that doesn't even begin to define her, doesn't even begin to capture like her majesty. And so like we're going into this train of like self-appreciation and the divine feminine energy, and what the divine feminine energy is. She's not apologizing for having too much enthusiasm and talking too fast. She's not apologizing for like expressing wildly, you know, and like laughing too loud. Like that is not who she is. And so when we enter into this notion of like what it means to step into this power, like forgiveness as it's to sublimate somebody's atrocious action is to be in the she energy of community and know that all power is for us. And I don't really know what that means, but there's so much here that's hard to convey. And so I think that last little bit isn't exactly it, but it's so close. It's close. It is close. So I'm looking at these energies, and I'm looking at all of this fire, and I'm really feeling like there's labor pains going on here. There's an opportunity, there's a gift, there's a way of understanding ourselves and the energies within us and what it means to be a she community. Divine feminine power is that primal worldview, that I keep this quote about the primal worldview because I always try to have to like I'm always in a place of trying to remember certain things sometimes, like things that really just like hit me, and I'm like, I don't want to lose that. And so the primal worldview, I took a quote down. It was from our first book study group, Cosmos and Psyche. And it said, the primal worldview is the intelligence and soul pervade all of nature and the cosmos. And a permeable human self directly participates in that larger matrix of meaning and purpose within which it is fully embedded. That's porous, that's permeated. Everything has the intelligence and the soul. Whereas the modern worldview, in contrast, is in a modern worldview, all qualities associated with purposeful intelligence and soul are exclusively characteristic of the human subject, which is radically distinct from the objective non-human world. So like I have those two things out as quotes because this divine feminine energy is the primal worldview. It is we, it is she. It is you and your ancestors that are with you, constantly operating like as part of like what you are. And so a good example of this is like I'm always talking about my grandpa. I have really good relationship with all of my ascended ancestors and my ascended guides. Like, so I was complaining about I hate cooking. I don't like to cook. I want to like to cook. I tell myself I want to like to cook. I pretend that I like to cook. I convince myself that I like to cook. And I live somewhere where if I don't cook, like it's not going to be good, you know. Like I don't have a lot of restaurant choices around here, you know. That said, like I don't want to cook for myself. It's like I'm lazy in this way. Like and I said to my grandfather, like, I want to eat delicious foods. But I don't want to cook for myself. I cook for other people. I like to cook for other people because I like other people to be like, oh, you made a delicious thing. And then I'm like, yeah, I did it. And then I feel like this is what cooking is. Like if I just cook for me, like this bothers me. Like, you know what I mean? Like for some reason it's like a disconnect and I quit I'd go. And so my grandfather was like, you're not just cooking for you. Oh, this is the, throwing this card out during the story. This isn't supposed to be in here. So my grandfather was like, you're not cooking for yourself. You're cooking for, you know, your entire lineage, the kingdom of heaven that is within you, that you are made up of, like everything that you are, you know, deserves to have a delicious experience. And I was like, yeah, but I like, you're not a person outside of me. You know what I mean? Like, you're not like a person saying like, this is good, you know? And my grandfather was like, how do you think that the tastes that you like, how do you think you come to those conclusions? And I was like, I just think that the things that I like, the taste that I have, the taste in food that I have, that is very particularly like my favorite foods, where do I think I got that? I think I got that from liking foods. And he said that comes from your ancestry. That comes from the energies that are within and through your experience of expressing you. Like you're not your kaleidoscope of energies. You're not just like one laser that's like beaming around. And your sense of what tastes good comes from the community that is within you that makes these, this is like by collaboration and consensus with your higher self. Like that is yes, you know, that is no to those yucky cookies and a yes to that cookies. That's a collaborative process. We never think of it that way. But when we're brought into this, like this, when we look through the veil, when we're actually looking through the veil, and why it's so important as a spiritual practice in almost every tradition to like relieve ourselves of the ego, is to understand that like communally we experience what is beautiful and what is love and what is life. And communally, we come to conclusions and see things and have thoughts. Like we're not a one-man ship. And what it is to like turn around and interact with those energies in a responsible way, because there is this notion of madness when we can't differentiate between ourselves and others. And a spiritual practice that includes like rituals and prayers and intention includes like honing in on like the dialogue between self and like self elsewhere in whatever prayer form you use. And that facilitates this communication where you're being nurtured through your growth, and when you're not feeling ping-ponged around by whatever energy like appeals to whatever mood that you're in. And so it is developing a relationship with divinity, where you're developing an intentional relationship with divinity by saying, who am I and where am I, and like what does it mean to communicate with like the greater, more expansive parts of myself that have lived in other times, in other spaces, in other ways, with other forms. And so sublimation, when we think about what sublimation is, it's this primal worldview that says like, yes, so-and-so slighted me badly, and that situation needs to crumble. But I'm a part of something much bigger and something much beyond this. And what it is to communicate with that is to escape like the limited view that like we would otherwise have if we really did feel alone in the world. It's almost sublimating alone to like connectedness, and doing so with the divine genius as our inspiration on how that connectedness happens. That is magic, that is belief, and that is faith. And so with this Empress about like being like what develops within you and the way of what you bring into the world as the divinity that you are and express when you express your authentic self. Authentic expression is praise. We feel it, we see it, and we experience it when we see somebody is carrying and conveying the muse. When we see these people who can sing, they are like channeling the muse without any impediments. There is nothing impeding them. And we see that authentic expression, and all of us collectively turn toward it and experience this praise. And we're taken with that muse into an expansiveness within ourselves and around ourselves that defies our limitations and defies an individual's limitations. That's why we're not worshiping the person, we're worshiping the muse. And to know that is to know that the muse is for us as well. It comes in our authentic expression. And when we step into that alignment, which is what our spiritual practice allows us and helps us do, we experience this like flow. And it's not an I, it's an us, but it's also a you. And like every unique expression is praise. And not finding that unique expression is a denial of self that like doesn't get, you know, so we're working, there's always working towards that. It's such a process, my gosh. Everyone it is, you know? So, we're working with like such good energies. I feel like it's such like good family energies, but with the 10 of Swords, I'm glad that's there. Like, before we aim to get too cheerful, let's take a look at some of this 10 of Swords business, because forgiveness isn't really about a greater picture that we apply on a festering wound, like a salve that like wears off 4 hours later, and then we have like just it burns again and we're angry and nothing's forgiven. Like what we actually have to do is like we almost have to open the wound and clean it out, rip out those roots, that like sickness, like from that pain, unresolved, unheard, unwitnessed. There's a lot that comes up when we talk about forgiveness that like requires a witness in one way or another. That's why the technology of faith for prayer allows for forgiveness to transpire. Like you'd pray for forgiveness and then therefore it happens. It's a communicative, you need the divine. Let's take a look. Let us take a look. And it's not just prayer. Like, there's methods, there's spiritual technology in every belief system that gets us there. The anointing is in every spiritual practice if it's practiced right. It's a substance, the substance of God held. Belief informs it, but belief does not contain it. That would be ridiculous, right? So we're picking our head up from any like supremacy of story structure, or archetypal story structure, because the archetype can hold God. The story can hold God, but it can't contain it. The story of someone tells about you can hold you, but it can't contain it. You're so much more than anything anyone could say about you. Anyone's interpretation of you is like, that's it. That's not you. That's their fiction, because it can't possibly capture the divinity that went into making you, forming you, expressing through you, the author and finisher that is your particular experience of this life. So like, there's so much there that like we have to be able to like this energy says, like, grasp in order to move into a greater sense of self, a more expansive life, and more powerful belief that reaches us and heals us. And forgiveness extends life. It's life extension every single time. A lack of forgiveness will shorten a life. And so there's something that, you know, and that doesn't say that there's no correlation that says sickness is punishment, because there's so much there. But what we are looking at is just what the technology is capable of doing. It's a technology of release. It unbinds you from stories even. Okay, breasts of the goddess and the hidden world of fairies. And calling in the spirit of place. Oh, I love it. I love this. I'm getting excited. This is good news. Lapdog, hound of the goddess, intimacy with self. This has been coming up all week long. It's been like intense. Like I've been having like issues. I'm getting kind of like mad and cranky around this. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Sublimation is hard, actually. It's not easy, because the nature of what sublimation actually asks us to do is that story of death and rebirth. It's that it's stepping into that story structure that says, I'm probably going to be crucified and then have to be born again. In order to get through this forgiveness process, I have to, the version of myself that was right and deserved to be where I was doing what I was doing has to die, even though it was right. And like, that's sad, because now that version of me that was right about having a right to be there, having a right to say that, having, you know, like like forgiveness is always like you're forgiving something unforgivable. And in order to do that, a part of the self has to die. In order to forgive something unforgivable, a version of yourself that believed in a world that existed before that unforgivable thing happened, that version of yourself that existed before the unforgivable thing happens dies. And that's true. So it's like let me try to voice that right, because I can feel myself getting it like jarbled, and it's really important. When you're walking along in life and you are expansive and free and have a blissful innocence about your own mortality and your own vulnerabilities, that is a beautiful experience of vitality and power and alignment with the universe. It's true to who you are at your most vital to be in that space of awareness and in that realm and in that kingdom of self. When something shatters that, when someone comes in and they bash a boundary, when someone comes in and they pull a rug out from underneath you, when someone comes in and they trespass or they misinterpret, like whatever the offense is that shatters the illusion of invincibility, that kills the invincible self. It murders the invincible self. It's always a murder. And murder is always unforgivable. And so what the technology of forgiveness asks us to do, it's something very illogical. And it's to let that version of ourselves die. And the reason that we do that is because that version of ourselves died. And if we don't release it, if we continue to hold it, we have to live that death continually. We have to walk with that death, talk with that death. We have to embody that death. We start to die. That's why forgiveness enables us to live longer. It restores our vitality. And the reason why it does this is because when we let go of that injustice and that self that was once innocent, and we step into a knowledge that says, I take this knowledge that such an offense could occur, and that such a thing happens in the reality that is the whole body of God that we are within. And I step into this knowing about creation. And rather than stop there, defined by the defeat that creation had over me, rather than loss of all power in that defeat, I will sublimate that truth with a greater knowledge and knowing about consciousness, about what you actually are, she, community, we, about the picture you actually belong to, about the purpose that is actually yours. It is an encounter with the truth and the reality of God, to know that your reality as that innocent, perfect vantage point, viewpoint, moment in time changes and cause it and is caused to sublimate and take on new form and become something else. Taking on new form. Taking on new form. Think about the lifespan. I want you to go and think about the lifespan. And I want you to think about the fact that in order for the child to be born, the baby has to change its form. And in order for the adolescent to form, the child has to change its form. In order for the adult to take form, the adolescent has to change its form. The technology of forgiveness is knowing that we have to change form, and that things will come and incite that change. It's understanding that at a fundamental level, that what we are meant to do and be and participating in is an ever-changing form. Trying to keep our form what it was when we're meant to grow, that's like trying to crawl back in the womb and stay in the womb. Energies that don't want to let go of their form, that stay grounded, that don't cross over, don't want to leave the mother. That's what the form. It's like it's a period of time. It's like it's a growth. It's another womb. This is just a womb, and then there's another womb, and then there's another womb, and then we keep on expanding. We're born into new versions of ourselves. We're not meant to stay the same form, and we're not meant to attach to forms. No, we're not meant to attach to not change. So forgiveness is forgiving that change happens. At a very fundamental level, it's saying change is going to occur. And instead of thinking of change as your enemy and life as your enemy, because it keeps on imposing that you change form, that you adapt, that you reimagine, that you expand, that you grow, that the things that were holding you in one position are no longer there, and that something else is now your experience of yourself. So this breasts of the goddess, like where we are when we're a little baby soul. So I have this cool thing to tell you about that my ancestors were showing me, and that this intimacy with the self and the lapdog hound of the goddess. This is all part of that. And I look up at my clock and it's 33333. It's really cool. Let's think, what is it? Okay, yeah, so with this 10 of Swords being about like, so I'm just trying to get back into that channel. I'm trying to get connected with these energies again. Because they're really cool. And I feel like almost like I could take a nap. That's how like calming this energy. These energies are really calming. So this 10 of Swords energy here, what we're looking at is like, of course, that doesn't make light of the fact that like there has been so much pain, and that you inherit some really gnarly things to have to move your way through. Like this is an ecosystem. That's where we are. We live in an ecosystem. When you look around, like, where are we? It's an ecosystem. When you go to the doctor and they tell you about what's going on inside, what are they telling you? It's an ecosystem. When we think about what God is, he's an ecosystem. As above, so below, as within, so without. And I say that often, but what I mean by that is, yes, there's a central body. You have a body, you have a one, but you also have within you these kingdoms and these dimensions and cells and mitochondria and these realms and these different life forms, and like there's community. That's why it's pantheon and like singular. So like when we think about what that means, it's a relationship between the divine feminine aspect of God, the many, and the divine masculine aspect of God, the authority. These two things, one is not supreme over the other, and one doesn't rule over the other. And like, authority is not even the right word. So much of what it is to understand what forgiveness is to reconcile with power differentials. So like, when we talk about the technology of forgiveness, like, we have to go really hard on the complexity related to power differentials between our divine feminine aspects within ourselves and our divine masculine aspects within ourselves, and the consciousness that is created between those two things about everything. So like, when we reckon with like energy differentials, like, if we're really talking about alchemy, and we're really talking about the alchemy of what we are, and we're really getting down to like the nuts and bolts of essences, and working with transformation and sublimation, everything that we're getting into in the way of magic is about alchemy. And all alchemy and successful entry, the initiation phase to ever handling power and energy, is managing the energy of forgiveness. Mastering the energy of forgiveness, because you're not allowed to go anywhere near people with power unless you have forgiven every single one of them, every single thing, because that's the only way that you can go towards community with and it's hard, it's love. It's why I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, I had to walk the perimeter around forgiveness, because I'm like, I do not forgive a lot of people, a lot of things. Like, like, I have a long list. I came to my ancestors and I said, I was talking to them and I was like, look at this look at this big pile of things I have to forgive. Look at that, and the sublimation is like, you just have to forgive one thing, and then all of those other things vanish. And like, that's the technology done right. But to do that, we really have to work with this notion of like the part of ourselves that is agency, that is like driving the car, and the part of ourselves that is like communal, that is informing that journey, and how we manage like to interact with that is like how we gain access to our authentic expression and all of that. So there's so much here, but what it really comes down to is like this intimacy with self, the lapdog, the hound of the goddess, like to forgive this human experience, this 10 of Swords experience, which is not insignificant by any means. To come to a place of peace about everybody who's ever hurt you and why, is to first understand that where we are with this breasts of the goddess, the spirit of the mountains, like the world that we're in, this is not it. This is not the beginning and the ending. This is not your only experience. This was not your only chance to have a true birthday party. This was not your only chance to have that love story. This was not your only chance to be that kind of mother or that kind of person. This was not your only chance to get to the Olympics. The experience you're having because you're trying to, like, it's part of your heritage. It's part of your emancipation and the emancipation of those that came before you, that share the traits that you have, that are gaining revelation through your experience of growth and transformation, and your experience and your participation in relationship with divinity, your participation with and relationship with God is their access to what it means to come into deliverance. And if you don't think that we have a divinity that works it out so that everyone gets through, because everyone is valuable and everyone is loved and every aspect of God is worthy of overcoming the transgressions that they've formed against and that formed through them, every single one of your ancestors has an opportunity to be delivered if you take that nose and that mouth and those eyes into this world for another run, so that they can experience themselves through your perspective as you gain access to deliverance, through the stories that they had to live through, but now it's through your new perspective as they live with and through you. Nothing is lost, everything is gained. That is the net and the substance of what it is to be alive and to have your round on the wheel of fortune through a lifespan. You came in with stories and traits to emancipate and liberate those aspects of yourself that lived in other ways and other realms and other forms. You are the kingdom of heaven on earth. And what you bring through in the way of their salvation is your next experience, you know, like, so like there is this really beautiful thing about like forgiveness is knowing that this is super temporary. And whatever story you choose to embody with the wisdom of divinity that is inspired through your learning and your emancipation is fine. There's not police at every checkpoint, like with your beliefs. Did you believe it right? Did you believe it wrong? Like that's that's like authoritarian, like Roman Empire nutcase, you know, social engineering of spiritual technology. That's not the truth. The truth is what resonates at a soul level, at felt experience, at gnosis, at knowing. And so to know that this is a temporary experience of emancipation for you and everybody else you bring through the stories of your life that were simultaneously the unfinished stories of their lives. You emancipate that trait, and now that trait goes in as an asset for those that take it further. So what my ancestors told me when I was complaining about everything, because that's how I like, you know, I go into prayer and I'm like, my long list of complaints today. That's kind of how I like go at it. And like they were saying, you know, when they took me back to a vision of this hidden world of the fairies, they took me back to a vision of like ancient tribal ancestry. And they showed me this very old grandmother, this crone, and she was the matriarchal tribal leader. And the tribe was only like, I think it was like 400 people deep. Like we're not talking about like an enormous group, but the tribal pride was really intense. Like it was like they experienced themselves as a she and a we in a way that I don't think we could ever imagine. They were in such coherence with nature and themselves as being imbued with that primal worldview of intelligence and soul pervading all of nature and permeable within themselves. And they considered themselves not one, but like one being, and that their group was like this one being. And so every single time a new soul, a new baby was born, they celebrated the eternity that they were going to spend with that new being. And the lifespan that new being had came to teach those around them, but that new being was always with them, because they understood that they were only here on the breast of the mother with a body for as long as they needed to form with a body. But then when they were able to join with the whole, that they would have that life with them forever to participate with and learn with and have an intimacy of self with, to know themselves through and with and around, to know and be known by. That the nature and the creation of what the divine actually is. Like they were showing me, like, in order to get access to my own sense of power within myself, I need to understand that I am made up of, on the one side, a divine feminine energy of the community of all that came before me and all that will be and all that informs why I like a sandwich. Why do I like a sandwich? Is because the she, the ancestry, the community within me, the many that inform my taste in clothes, my taste in food. I'm an expression of the whole. And then the divine masculine aspect of myself, which is how that takes form and is brought into the world as an offering almost, and operates in the world with agency. And so they were saying, you have to know that the who is God and who is goddess. Your relationship to the goddess is the community. Your relationship to the divine feminine aspect of God is in that notion of community. Your relationship to the divine masculine God is in that notion of agency. These are substances you hold. The truth about the divine masculine and divine feminine, the truth of who God and goddess are as a whole, are substances, energies. Now, how do we know these energies? How do we have intimacy with these energies? How do we have a relationship with our creators? how do we ever get close to them if they're grander and more expansive, if they're these energies? How are we supposed to get instructions on how to wear our hair right or wrong? Who's going to tell us the right shoe for that outfit? You know, like there's like, how are we practically going to manage with these divinity, these divine energies that created all of life, all of creation? And it's this energy that we know within us as she and he, and what we create between them, that communal space, that consciousness is how we know them. But that consciousness is not a one. That consciousness is a many. And so we know God through the many aspects. But we are God, or we commune with God, or we understand God at a felt, intimate level by the container that is the body, that is where the soul moves through until it graduates. Sometimes that's a long lifespan, sometimes it's really short. But in eternity, we know each other in our divine form. And we know ourselves in our divine form. And we are always in co-creation, and we are always co-creating. And we are creating new life with new stories that get brought into the world, that we then marshal through this experience, the hidden world of fairies, the hidden world of ancestry, the hidden world of forms and shapes and essences that we are meant to know as the divine genius that guides us, that is the divine masculine aspect of God, which is intelligent, which does know us individually, but guides us through that which we can understand it by, through the stories and the experiences and the people and the movements that we go through in our lives. It directs us with that impulse that we think of as just being ourselves, but it is that energy of the Divine Father. And that energy of the Divine Mother is what nurtures us, what coaxes us, you know, into like that reception of like everything that is around us in community. And all of this is broken right now for a lot of good reasons, but healing that within ourselves and healing those notions within ourselves and allowing us to express from both places, that which nurtures and that which like takes what is nurtured and brings it out into the world and expresses it. Managing that flow and those relationships with energy within ourselves, and like how we learn from each other and what it is to like find the divinity in each other, but also not have unrealistic demands of what like God actually is. And like that's where it gets tricky, because we want a divinity, we want a God that's going to tell us what to do and where to stand and how to do it and then we can be perfect. And we can be perfect enough for God, and God is perfect, and we are perfecting for God's perfectness, and here's our instructions, and that's how we get there. That's not it. That's never been it. That's always been the wrong road. Every true prophet will tell you that. If you look to the words of any true prophet, not the dogma, just the words, you're going to see that it's never that. What's meant for you is to learn in relationship and relating. And let me get the channel again, because I just lost it and I need more cards. Ooh, this is coming through like with this world of the hidden fairies. Like, you know, part of the forgiveness is like learning that like we're learning through these experiences, and we're getting slighted to heal. We're having these hardships to heal. We're getting hurt in these ways to heal these things. And we're not just healing those things for ourselves, we're healing these things for community. So that divine feminine aspect of ourselves is receptive. It is the part of ourselves that receives the stories that we walk into, receives the love that we get from the parents that we have. It's receptive. And so to forgive that we are on the receiving ends of like aspects of the divine that are both positive and negative and need to be worked out in relationship with others and relationship with divinity, pulling all those energies through the spectrum of our experience. Like there's so much here. And the spell cast over your life is that it's some simple thing where like, you know, duality and wrong and right. There's so much more to what it means to forgive than to just accept a narrative. I mean, to forgive it, to sublimate. And if you can find a narrative that works, a technology of faith, a story that can help you like with that process of sublimation, go at it. It's yours. Take it, run with it. Like free yourself over and over again. Let it work for you. Technologies of faith. It's not about the story. The placebo pill. It's the belief that heals. It's not the story about the belief. Always. It's all over the place. Every study, everything. It's proven. So, you know, when we go into this and we look at like, you know, what it means to be influenced by this world, hidden world, is to like operate with technologies of faith and find that one that we can believe. Because sometimes, and for some people, the stories that they grow up with fail them. And that's that moment of sublimation, forgiving that story that didn't work, forgiving that version of God that didn't, in order to step into a relationship with a version of God that will. And it's often going to be a different version of God, because it's the version of God you're given is never the relationship that it ends up being. The story that you're told about your parents is never the relationship that you end up having with them. It's an interaction. It's a meaningful interaction with change and development and expansion and growth. And this lightning is going to strike light. Lightning is going to strike your life. And in order to get that light, in order for that egg to crack, and that new life to be born, that old life has to give way, and we have to forgive the old story. We have to forgive the version of ourselves that had to die to form into a new version of ourselves. And what that new version of ourselves is, what we create in that rebirth, has a lot to do with how we let everything that happened affect us, and how we take that with us, and how we let that inform who we are going to be in any given moment. Because we are an ecosystem of energies that want to express art and beauty and relating through us, that want to heal and love and experience through us, that don't want to see us fade, that don't want to see us go the way of consuming ourselves and being consumed by energies that only want to consume because they've given up and we've given up and now we've all given up together. That's how we sort of end up in these, it's like this, the ancestry, you know, that like has to cross over, and that like time and time again, new life enters with a battle sheet, you know, of strategies on how to pull everyone and themselves through, and how they're going to connect to the divine, and what their contracts are, and what they're going to learn, and how they're going to overcome. And time again, what does often happen is we get consumed by the grief, and our vitality goes, and we begin to like enter into a new phase, and we have to literally physically start to die in one way or another. Like, it's really not as simple as all that, because I don't want us to reduce anything down to a formula that's simple. And it's a biological model, and sickness is like part of this. But sickness takes so many forms, and health takes so many forms. And so like, I want us to really think about this hidden world that we like are in as the kingdom that we are born to. The lineage, the kingdom, the traits, and all that interacts with that. Those other kingdoms, and those alliances between kingdoms, and those relationships between kingdoms, and those bloodlines between kingdoms, and the stories that are created between and through and around, and the new archetypal structures, and the new experiences of life, and the new deliverance, and the new ascension, and the new awakenings. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of a new concept of yourself that is more inclusive. We have so many fears related to duality, so many limiting beliefs about what is meant for you and what is not meant for you, and what is meant for others and what is not meant for others, and how we're supposed to share, and what is the hierarchy, and what is the this, and why do they deserve that, and why do I deserve this, and who am I, and who are they, and you know, these are these stories. This is all spellcasting, resin. It's gunk. Separation. It's just gunk. It's separation. So like, forgiveness is actually knowing this bigger picture. Breathing. You breathe in, and like, we breathe with everything that is alive. Our breath is alive. We breathe with everything that is alive. So that sublimation comes in with knowing that intimacy with self is an intimacy with the aspects of ourselves that come from so many places. And yes, there are predatory energies that like, even within ourselves, that cause the separation, like where we're like us and them, you know, my crappy life and their like life, you know. That's where we're called to think about what we're identifying with, because it is gonna end up always being like, the energies that you're hanging out with are the energies that were stuck just where you are when they died, and you're all trying to figure it out together, and they're with you because you make sense to them, because your perspective is their perspective. And so what does it mean to transcend these perspectives? Well, we have to like die to old stories about what we were supposed to be, how it was supposed to be, and what we were supposed to have. So much of my ancestral work has been working with women who like did not have children for one reason or another, because I didn't have kids. And so like these notions of like narratives around barrenness related to like types of bringing in life in the world and where our place is, and when the hierarchy doesn't give you a place, like how do you ever have anything? How do you ever live? How are you not just cursed of God? What does it mean to work with those energies is also to like engage with what it is to feel those feelings. It's never simple with that 10 of Swords. Never. And so this intimacy of self with self is looking at these things and looking at these things within ourselves and emancipating these things and forgiving the story that we're in, forgiving the divine and what the substance of God is. The substance of God does not just offer us wonderful stories if we're good and terrible stories if we're bad. You know, the substance of God is just not a taskmaster that gives us horrible thing to learn from after horrible thing to learn from until we're nothing but like hollowed out and begging for mercy with kindness to everything that we meet. Like that's a saccharine, like there's a sweetness that is just simply begging for mercy. And these energies, they are your ancestors are like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Participate in life with us. Participate in making really good food that tastes good, because we are experiencing that with you. And if you put in the effort, we're going to instruct you. We're going to inspire you. We're going to go to the grocery store with you. You're going to feel the presence of us with you if you allow yourself to. And no, you're not going crazy. You just have to learn how to be. You know what I mean? Like, I want to give you a picture. You know, I want to give you a picture that is absolutely true. I always have, I like literally my brain is like tripping on the acid of my own like mental brain. That's always true. But like my experience is with divinity, walking with divinity. I don't ever talk to myself. I don't ever act out of place. I don't ever have to, you know, my authenticity does not include me like introducing my spirit guides to people who can't see them. The divine is divine. It's sacred. The dignity of my privacy and the experience of like what it is for me to be in prayer and reverie with the energies that I see and hear and experience so clearly, the validity of that doesn't need to be validated by external people and forces and stories. That's my experience. That's my truth. And for me to express honestly is to live as myself and to experience as myself. And part of what it is for me to experience as myself is to maximize my like ability to like receive and be received in community, which is to see and experience as others see and experience, observe and be with them where they are. And I don't have to force them to be where I am. But where I am is sacred. It's a sacred place within me that I honor and that I give time and energy and thought and reverence to. There's nothing insane or wrong or dirty or evil about that process and about that self-intimacy. When we're putting all kinds of external structures on the way that we receive divine intervention, like we are causing ourselves to not receive divine intervention. When we're limiting it till this way or that way, we are cutting ourselves off. And we don't know what is at play archetypally. We don't know what we're dealing with in terms of the shadow end of any story that we enter, and that we're meant to move through that labyrinth, and how to get that transformation and that liberation is with that thread, that intuition. And so, you know, that's calling in the spirit of the place. And so with the separation in this resin, this gunk that keeps you feeling like you're all alone spiritually, when you are absolutely 100% not alone spiritually. The sanctity and the peace and the anointing that you experience in life and with the divine, like that is always with you as something that's communal. That is the community of whether you consider it a community of angels or ascended ancestors, or you consider it literally just the energy of God itself, Goddess herself. You know what your home feels like at its perfect, most like temperate, peaceful place. You know what your body feels like in that homeostasis. That's the intimacy of self. That's divinity. That's where you are at home with the energies that have created with and through you. You're at home with the substance of Goddess and God that inform all aspects of what it is for you to breathe and be. And so this calling in the spirit of a place, I'm reminded of the, this is a good example. And let me just have a sip of water, iced tea actually. Let me just... With this calling in the spirit of a place, especially under this Page of Pentacles. So when you're sitting at your desk, or you're sitting at a table, or you're sitting in a room alone, and you feel someone come in before you see them, and you look and you just turn and you instinctively know someone came in, and you just look. That's something that most people have experienced. We can all have this notion of our psychic selves as having this capacity for premonition, where when you feel someone come in the room, you look. And what that indicates, and what that gives us like a a gnosis about, is that energies, people are not only people. You're not only a person. You're also an energy. You're an energy that people can feel before it enters that room. And not only are you an energy that somebody feels before, like, you know, everyone has an energy. You feel it when it enters a room. If you close your eyes, you can feel when you're alone, and you can feel when you're with others. So those are divine energies that are unique and specialized and aspected. And you are, like, before we give you a name, before we give you a body, before we turn around and look and see you with our eyes, when you walk in a room, you have a presence. You are a presence. And it's unique and it's aspected. Someone else has a presence that you feel is different than your presence, and somebody else has a presence that is different from somebody else's presence. We all carry a unique aspected divine spark that is the potential that we are born with. And what we do with that potential is the kind of person that we become. And that's just an ongoing process of development, but that's also an eternal essence that is specialized, that is unique, that joins the whole as itself. You are part of the kingdom of heaven within the whole as yourself. But you're meant to know yourself in relationship to others as the divinity that walks as you. And when you encounter another, you're encountering the divinity that walks as someone else. And those divine sparks are what we worship when we worship God. Those divine sparks are what we worship when we worship Goddess. And so when we desecrate the divinity of another by the supremacy of our position or the supremacy of our story about themselves, we're desecrating what God created, what God has created. We're trying to place limitations where Goddess or God never put limitations. And then we, by virtue of doing that, limit ourselves. We limit our own expression. We limit our own growth. We limit our own expansion. And so when we call in the spirit of a place, we recognize the divinity in others, and we recognize the divinity in ourselves. And we understand that what it is to participate in we is to honor the divine feminine aspect of community by honoring ourselves as something that is worthy of like that much sanctity. And you know, you're walking around with this precious divine aspect that expresses through you in a very specific way. And that specific expression, authentic expression, is praise to what created you, and praise to those who are created with you, and praise in communication with these things. We're meant to know each other. This intimacy with self is intimacy with others. And the way that we operate is like that calling in the spirit of the place, that sanctity of being, and operating through it. And seeing it in others, because then they're experiencing themselves in that sanctity of being too. It's cool. This is the way to relate. And that's not cheapening anything, you know, like that, this breath of life that we all share, that sanctity of being that we were created to exist for eternity as and with and through. We're not supposed to lose ourselves, but we're also not supposed to cling to this lifespan and what flimsy lessons it had to offer us in the way of status, because that's nothing. That doesn't even exist. You know, that's something that ruins the soul. It's not something that expands it. Yeah, so that's like sublimation. Like, you know, so our first lesson, let me get some more cards here, because I want to go into sort of, I want to bring an ending into this reading where, you know, what does it mean then to turn inward? What does it mean to sort of discern? Because we can go crazy with a lack of discernment. You do need a relationship to divinity, to the soul. Your source is soul, right? The divine aspect of divine masculine energy, where there is boundaries and authority and your self-worth that like operates as well as those boundaries, that's going to be your soul. Your source is soul. That is a still small voice. That is like a certain kind of relationship that you're going to want to like work on cultivating. But there's also the community, the ascended ancestors, the ascended guides, and some people call them angels. You could call them angels if it makes you feel more comfortable. That doesn't matter. These definitions, these stories, these concepts, these symbols, the sounds of each letter in a word as sounded out. If yeah, like your guides are like saying, like they're kind of pulling me out of this because they're finding me, like they're saying, don't make an argument. There doesn't need to be a need to make an argument in order to, like, that full picture is accessible at the level that someone is able to receive it. And so, you know, I don't know why that came in, but that's for somebody. We're going to bring in some encouragement. We're going to talk about like what to look at this week in the way of forgiveness is first intimacy with the divine. And through that intimacy with divine is the intimacy. So there's the divine self. That's that soul relationship that we have. The soul is going to be your resonance, your gnosis. That's going to be the part of you that feels safe or unsafe. That's how you know that you are in the presence of the divine or not in the presence of divine, sort of. Because a lot of like our conditioning makes us feel unsafe around authenticity and power because it threatens, you know, stories. But there is this way in which truth sinks like a stone to the bottom of the lake, you know, very smoothly, and that's like a resonance. And lies always agitate, and you have to reinforce lies because they agitate, you know. So that's like, it's a feeling space. Discernment is a feeling space. And so part of your relationship with the divine is like working with the story that you're in, like what you're having to work out, where you're having to be with it in prayer, with this energy of like, where's the center of gravity, the ground of being, soul. But in terms of limerence and like the divine genius and what it means to have your emotional needs met spiritually in community, that's going to be when you call on when you make that sacred space for the ascended ancestors, the ascended guides, like those energies that can come in and fill out your experience of your perception and how you're moving through life with that perception. These are not perfect energies. That's one of the things that like perfection will kill you. There's a demon and a stronghold associated with types of perfection and forms in relationship to perfection, because it's perverted. It's a perverse structure, this notion of perfection. You know, we are expanding within the whole, and the whole is expanding within itself, and we are always in becoming. And so our guidance system, the ancestral pool from which we gain our wisdom and our knowledge, also brings with it levels of flawed perception that need to be worked out externally in the material world through your experience. And so things are always in flux and things are always in movement, which is why I don't think that we have the same archetypes moving with us always. We are with the archetypes that are the family members that are working within the different aspects within our life that they have to work through and we have to work through. And there's going to be ancestors that have already bested and beat out and overcome these things that are going to pull you through. And there are going to be ancestors that are stuck in the mire of their own ego position on like whatever that is that keeps you there. And so it's either unforgiveness or forgiveness, and you have to do that motion, but that releases you and everyone else. And so yeah, that's the movement. It's a movement of sublimation, but I want to bring us into here some coherence. Let's go over here and get this. So forgiving the circumstances of life, forgiving the stories that you have to participate in, is also forgiving the ancestors that were stuck right where you're stuck, that dealt with like, that had to sort of like be there, you know, that are still trying to find their way through this. They're still trying to find their way towards a sense of divinity in eternity, you know, with these battle scars and these wounds. And you're also with the ancestors that are trying to coax you out and say, you know what, we can heal from this. I did it, here's how. And so how we attune towards these energies and this inspiration and this information, again, this is something that we're working out, and a lot of it has to do with this balance of power between the divine masculine aspect of God and that substance, and the divine feminine aspect of God and that substance, and everything that is created within it in the form of consciousness that we all share. We share that consciousness, that Christ consciousness, that like, that's the whole group. That's the we and the she and the many, but also the one that like informs this process of growth. I mean, it's hard to understand, you know, because like, what does it mean to be in the body of the whole? It means that you're in community, in the body of the whole, and in cooperation with that whole is this is the process that we're all in together. You know, what does it mean to come into coherence with the whole? We don't know yet. We're learning. We're figuring it out. You know, we're asking. String of destiny. Okay, so let's keep on going. Making peace with these stories, falling in love with these stories, bringing these stories through and embodying them in the most divine way. That is what we're really meant to do here. That's what we're supposed to do in like this story world that we find ourselves in. It's our job right now. Look at this, ancestral wisdom and the breath of peace. I love these cards. So the bottom of the deck energy, we have community of humanity. This is what we've been talking about. You know, I'm going to read this little affirmation that I want you to jot down and take with you into this week. All of these are going to be like little affirmations. If you have a journal, a spiritual notebook that you're using, you know, I'm going to take these down in the morning. I'm going to get up. I'm going to set the intention to, you know, heal with the collective. And I'm going to say these to myself in prayer, as a group prayer. Sort of join in prayer in the morning if you want. So this one, with community of humanity, this affirmation is, I am loved and appreciated by the people in my life. I give the love I want to receive in faith. I send my love out knowing that in time I will receive it back. That's this energy of this reading. That's the energy that we're with. That's the energies that we're with. That's what's coming through for us all, is this notion of we are loved and appreciated by the people in our lives because we are participating in this eternity, in this kingdom of heaven on earth, in this community, in this coherence of what we are like building together and creating together. The ancestors with each new life are so happy for the magic that comes in with those lives that is there to now bring the whole kingdom higher. With these strings of destiny, you know, this is going to be about the stories that you came in to work out with your life, this is the sacrifice, that you were going to work out the story, that you were going to go into that archetypal story, that you were going to bring those features and those traits in, those unfinished, unforgiven, and that you were going to tend to that story with your perspective and bring divinity into it, and in bringing divinity into it, change its form, sublimate its form from ice to vapor, transformed, life and death, resurrection. That's the destiny. That's what we all come in to do it. Do we all succeed? No. We come rounds and rounds and rounds of this stuff with different perspectives. But if we're a part of divinity, if we're a part of that emancipation, if we're a part of what is bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth, and not a part about, not the part that is making everybody, you know, sick. You know, this strings of destiny here is, I weave the strings of my own destiny. I imagine my future into reality. I attract wisdom, cultivate strength, and today I will take the next step in my journey. Here's the thing about this. This is forgiveness right here. Forgiveness is saying, I'm going to weave the strings of my own destiny into this story that I'm in. I'm going to take those strengths. I'm going to take the divine genius. I'm going to take all of the aspects of the traits that I have. I'm going to forgive that this is a temporary experience of emancipation for the whole that we all participate in, by being brave enough to say, I'm going to take on a new perspective for the whole. Let's go in there. Let's get it. Let's overcome this. That means looking at the stories and the horrible things that have happened to you in your life and the things that have come against you and saying, yeah, I saved me and everyone else who went through this. Like, I wanted to go back for you all. I wanted to go back for me. I wanted to go back for the part of me that would have got left in a state of separation and gunk, hurting, if not from my perspective on this very same story. It's love. that you live through these things for. It is love for the least of them, for the most of them, which when you come and discover that, you know, what the experience of divinity through this story is to emancipate the story. And so I weave the strings of my destiny means I know that I'm in a story that I was destined to be in, and I'm weaving divinity into it. I imagine my future into reality, which means I know I am empowered to overcome the structures that are there to inform my demise, and that I am stuck in the story. I attract wisdom, cultivate strength, and today I will take the next step in my journey. You don't do that alone. You do that with the wisdom that came before you, the strength that came before you. You're in this together. You're driving this perspective. You were brave. You were brilliant. You were beautiful. You loved the you that you are, that would be going through this, because you loved those that came before you, that went through it and don't know how to see their way out. That is why. The sands of time here, it says, I am patient. I trust the timing of divinity. I act when the moment is right, not early, not late. I watch and wait as the sands of the hourglass fall, knowing each grain holds wisdom. I do not rush my destiny, lest I forever lose this moment. How many of us have had these days, these hours, where we just look up at divinity, where we look up at whatever version of God is our God, and we say, take me out. Done. I finished. I figured it out. Let's go. Beam me up, Scotty. How many of us have not wanted to go and flag down a UFO and just, you know, with a sign that says, like, anywhere but here. Take anywhere but here. I mean, how many of us haven't had these moments where we look at our experience and we feel defeated? But when you think about who you really are, this aspect of the divine that says, we're going back in. We're going back in. We're going to transform the way that they see themselves. We're going to transform the way that they see what it is to be divine. And they're going to transform what it is to understand their limitations. Be patient with your process. Be patient with this journey. Be patient with these stories that you're in. Be compassionate to yourself. Allow yourself to have every moment of experience with an observation, with the eye of observation that says, ascended ancestors, ascended guides, the divine aspect of God that is within me, the divine aspect of goddesses that is the community that came before me. What does it mean to bring in revelation on this story, to transform and sublimate it into that which the divine has taken into itself and come through with a divine genius? You're here, you want to take all your time, you want to experience all of this, because the ancestral wisdom, every single trait, every feature on your face comes from an ancestor that survived for you, to bring this through for you, for this experience to have with you. And to know that you are worthy, that you carry within yourself the potential of all the lessons and strength of 10,000 ancestors who came before you. To trust yourself, to trust your intuition, to trust your wisdom, to trust where you're being led, to trust yourself. This intimacy with self is not about looking at every single time you've been foiled, but looking at every single time you lift it up. Because the reason that you're still standing, the reason that you're not defeated, is because the ancestors that have already overcome the things that didn't beat you won out. And those ancestors are winning. You are living. They are winning. Keep on winning. You know, keep on keeping on that winning streak. You participate in the winning streak when you want to get up again. You participate in the winning streak when you sublimate the story that defeated you into a story that can't defeat you by a better story. When you take that ancestral wisdom that those before you that have already overcome into your experience, and you enter into that peace, that breath of peace. I breathe in peace. I exhale stress. I breathe in energy. I exhale weariness. My burdens float away like clouds. I am at peace. Forgive, release. This is how you enter your peace. You cannot enter your peace without participating in the technology of forgiveness, which releases people and releases the stories that were there to defeat you and did defeat you. The people who did disappoint you, release, 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 sublimate all of that into a greater picture that says, I'm here to forgive, and create a portal within this story that sublimates it and forms something new. And you're meant to participate in that forming new. And so, yeah, I want you to say these little sayings. And again, you know, I'm gonna, yeah, I mean, I'll hold them up. You can take a screenshot real fast if you wanna have them to look at, kind of think about, you know, talk to those ascended ancestors and those ascended guides about your place in community and what it means for you to participate, what it is for you to be you. And I invite you into pouting. Pout. Go to your ancestors and pout. I don't want to be there. I don't want this story. Don't do this. I don't like it. I don't want to have to be me. Do it. That's where that belongs. And they will answer, and they will comfort you, and they will soothe you, and they will bring you into a bigger picture, and they will help you sublimate those views. And that's what it is to be loved. That is what it is to have that cup filled. That is what it is to have your emotional needs met, and they are there for that. Spiritual access is that miraculous thing that can fill that cup from within. Go to them, cry, pound the wall with your grief, and they will pick you up. They are that soft spot where you land after you've been crying. They are what holds you there. That is the we and the community that you're a part of while you're here. And those voices from the ancestors who've given up, who say, give up, it doesn't matter. Then, you know, you get to choose who you listen to. The critic, the voices of condemnation, the voices of terrorizing, fear-mongering nonsense, or the voices that say, hey, you're loved. It's okay. You're doing a good job. Both energies are there for you. You know, where you enter the story and where you agree with, that's the work, that's the great work. It's the great work you're meant to do. And so these last two things I'm going to read, or actually three things I'm going to read. We're going to end with these. It's just kind of the attitude and the energy that, you know, I want to move into this next week with, because we're going to be working on forgiveness in a lot of different ways. I mean, this is, again, we're still kind of walking the perimeter, but I think that that's how we get to where we're going. We understand it's a technology of sublimation, and the practice of sublimating, though, is different. The practice of sublimating is participating with divinity, participating with what it means to be divine. And so this flourishing meadow, I cultivate positivity. My mind is a flourishing meadow of vibrant possibility. Positive thoughts bloom in the lush garden of my mind. Be mindful of the essences that you hold this week and what they are saying. Are they the judge and the jury? Are they condemning? Are they accusing? That's probably not the energy that you want to participate with life in, that you want to bring into the world with you. Condemnation. That's probably not who you want to represent as in this world. Maybe it is. Maybe you are the judge and the jury, and it is your job to condemn others. But then that's who you are, and that's the energy that people encounter when they can encounter you. So, you know, this cultivate positivity. It's less about like high vibe, like la 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 la. You know, I mean, we've all tried. You know, we all try to keep that vibe high. You know, it's more than that. It's about what are the energies that you are giving audience to. You are in community. You know, you are working out something very big in the story world that you're participating in right now. And when you are sitting on the sidelines condemning everyone around you, you're not really participating as an energy that is healing you from within. When you are in prayer, when you're cultivating positivity, it means that you're pulling in energies of forgiveness, wanting to sublimate a story of condemnation of everybody and yourself to a story of beauty. Where's the sacred beauty? Where's the divine in this person? What about this person is my opportunity to learn and grow and expand in like my own sense of myself and my own sense of what it is to give and receive. And that's why we have to do rounds and rounds and rounds of forgiveness work. We have to do reading after reading after reading, looking at what it means to give and receive, because that's where all the hurt and that's where all the damage comes in, and that's where all the lack of trust comes in, and that's where our relationship to our own divine feminine and divine masculine aspects and energies is afoul. And that's why our relationships externally from divine masculine and divine feminine is foul. You know, all this stuff about cultivating positivity and sublimating is actively participating and trying to be a part of a story that holds energies of forgiveness, energies of love, energies of compassion, energies of intelligence, energies of self-worth and boundaries. And like, so much goes into this. So much goes into perceiving yourself as divine and perceiving others as divine, and it's not self-annihilating sacrifice. And so there's a lot that we have to learn with this. And so when you cultivate positivity, you let your brain go places that feel good, that feel happy, that feel enlightening, that make you see yourself in a more beautiful sense. You allow for divine reverie to help you see yourself in a different light, in a different way. You know, like all of these things, these changes, that's how your ancestors are influencing you to expand and grow and take on this or that. But you let your mind run around like a little puppy. You let curiosity lead you. Because this dawn of transformation, right? Is that, yeah. Is that the two energies? Yeah, this chain of destiny. What am I doing? I feel like I'm kind of like lost my place with the channel. But this flourishing meadow and this chain of destinies, I watch my thoughts because they become emotions. I watch my emotions because they become words. I watch my words because they become actions. I watch my actions because they become character. I watch my character because it becomes my destiny. This is really important. If you're holding an energy of supremacy, I'm better than you, I know better than you, then you're going to become that energy. Then that's going to be who you are. That's who you're going to identify with. And that's what you're going to identify as. That's why the sin of pride is the worst sin. If we talk about sin at all, which again, we're going to get to with technology forgiveness. You become what you hold and what you participate with. And so this destiny, it's either something that's going to chain you to stories of the past that kept others limited, you know, or it's something that's going to free you. And so you watch your thoughts and you watch what energies you're participating with. Because you have a choice, and you can say, I call in the energy of peace, I call in the energy of love, I'm just going to put down all of this other stuff, and I'm just going to operate in these new energies and see how that alchemy alters the experience of the story that I'm in, how that alchemy sublimates the story from one where I was experiencing exclusively that to that which is experiencing now more. And that variation and that transformation and that change therefore brings in a whole other dawn of transformation, different experience. Today I am reborn. This is the dawn of my transformation, death and rebirth, forgiveness. So that's where we're going to leave it. That's where we're going to leave it this week. That was great. I feel like I feel like that I can work with this a little bit. I want you to picture circles and getting closer and closer and closer. The way that we're getting to forgiveness is we're not going to have a formula like a math problem. This plus that equals this, and now we practice in 10 steps. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is, this is at this concept of forgiveness, this enlightenment. We're walking in the perimeter, getting closer and closer and closer, and we're going to look at it from every angle, and we're going to stop along the way. And eventually we're going to be able to practice with it. But this is how we enter. And this is how we enter with humility. And this is how we enter as the divine, you know, with the divine and divine energies. And we're really mindful because, you know, this is shadow work. There's no two ways about it. Forgiveness is hard because, and fear and mentors and, you know, there's no perfection. There's no perfection. There is like a perfecting process, but I think that we forgive ourselves for lack of protection. Yeah, we forgive ourselves for what feels like lack of protection, which was actually a lack of perfection. Wow. All right, last little thing. Spirit is saying part of this being able to trust divinity, we forgive ourselves what felt like lack of protection. What it really was lack of perfection. Lack of perfection as being something that we come in with by way of unfinished stories, unforgiven epigenetic traits that we need to heal. So when we say there's no perfection, we mean that there's a whole thing to learn about what perfection is, what perfection isn't, how it's been falsely cast, and the ways in which it hurts us to condemn ourselves and others for somehow failing some perfected form. None of that is true. We're working it out. You know, some would say with fear and trembling, and some would say with liberation and assistance and support and love and divinity. So let's leave it there. Sending lots of love and hope and joy to all of you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Let's work with this. Tell me how you feel about it, because I like for these messages to beat them up, you know, tear them apart. You know, even, you know, leave comments that say like no, you know, or yes, you know. I just really want this material to be something that you don't feel like you're having to engage with on your own, because it is calling you into levels of sublimation and transformation, and you know, none of that is easy, and it's all pretty hard. So all right, leaving it there, sending lots of love, and I'll see you again next week.